This is Zero Station, broadcasting across the world to the Allied, Axis and Sino-Soviet Union blocs, as well as the countries of the Neutral Nations Organization.
Hello everyone and welcome at last to Zero Station Episode 4. My name is Alex, and to kick off this episode I'm going to take a look at a few announcements that were made since the last episode of the podcast, including the starter sets, Operation Achilles, unit cards and tokens. After that I'll move on to a discussion about Battlefront, the Dust Warfare community, and a few thoughts on how the two interact. But before I begin this episode, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the Unit Forward YouTube channel at youtube.com/unitforward. The channel recently reached 100 subscribers, and as this podcast is actually the first video up on the channel after reaching the 100 mark, I thought I'd say thanks here. Hopefully the channel will continue to introduce people to the amazing game that is Dust Warfare. Okay, time to start the show. Let's go. Okay, so welcome to episode 4 of Zero Station at long last. My apologies for the delay between the last episode, episode 3, and this one. It's just been tough to get in front of the microphone and record an episode of the podcast lately. But the podcast will be a lot more frequent from now on. Actually, episode 5 is going to follow shortly after this one. There'll be 2 episodes this week, although if you're listening in the future, then it will seem like, they've been there forever. But anyway, I'm going to kick off today's episode with a discussion of some products that have recently been announced and actually are now about to come out for Dust Warfare. And firstly, I'm going to have a look at the starter sets. Battlefront announced these Dust Tactics starter sets, which are intended to replace the revised core set that FFG produced. And of course, there is a starter set for each faction, the Axis, the Allies, and the SSU. And this is actually the first time that the SSU has ever had a starter set of any kind. So let's have a look at what you get inside each set. Actually, first I should go over what the general structure of each set is. Basically, each set has a hero, a walker, a medium walker, and 2 squads of infantry. You also get the new Dust Tactics rulebook. You get a paper mat, like a paper play mat like you had in the revised core set. You get the new Dust Tactics cards, the new CCG size cards, and you get the infamous new faction dice. But let's have a look at what you get inside each box. So the Allied box gives you Bazooka Joe, a Pounder, the Bot Hunters, and the Grim Reapers. Meanwhile, the Axis set gives you Stefan, a Ludwig, the Heavy Laser Grenadiers, and the Recon Grenadiers. And in the SSU box, the SSU Battle Group, you get Koshka, Grandma, the Red Thunder, and the Fikeli. And until recently, actually, the SSU box was not legal in Dust Warfare because, of Koshka. Basically, Koshka can't lead a red platoon, which means that the box was invalid for play as sold in Dust Warfare. But Battlefront changed that. They made a post on worldofdust.net to say that Koshka can lead a red platoon, so you can actually make a legal Dust Warfare platoon now with the SSU box. Basically, you have Koshka and Grandma as your command section, Red Thunder as your first section, and the Fikeli as a support section, and that makes a legal platoon. It's a really small platoon. It's only about 100 and something points, 105, 110 points, something like that, but it is a legal platoon. So you can use the SSU to kick off your Dust Warfare army. Okay, so if you're starting an SSU army, then you might think the starter set is a no-brainer. Just pick up the starter set. Bam, you've got a walker. You've got two decent squads of infantry, especially the Fikeli. They're a staple in many SSU armies. And, you get, a decent walker. I mean, Grandma's not the best walker the SSU has, but it's not horrible. And same for Koshka. Koshka is a decent hero for the SSU. Probably not the best one either, but not the worst hero by any stretch. Koshka is a decent kind of, I suppose people would call her a mid-tier hero. So yeah, I mean, the SSU box is a fine way to, start a Dust Warfare army, even though it is a Dust Tactics starter. And Battlefront has taken a bit of flack for that. Where's the Dust Warfare starters? Why is it all Dust Tactics? But you can still start a Dust Warfare army with this box. The miniatures are the same for both games. But on the other hand, you can still go down the kind of so-called traditional route of starting an SSU army, which is buy the FFG boxes all individually. So you get yourself a medium Walker box, you get yourself a box of for Kelly or Nikki, the hero pack, which gives you figures like Yakov and so on, and buy your army like that. I'm not sure if it's still that much more expensive. It probably is because you're buying separate boxes. But the SSU has always been the only army that you could do that with. You could everything was separate, and you can still do that now. Even though their starter set is coming out, you can start an SSU army just by buying the FFG boxes, at least while they're still available, until Battlefront starts repackaging them and selling them in Battlefront boxes. So yeah, starting an SSU army is you can go either way. You can either go the piecemeal route, or you can just buy the starter set and use that. However, for the Axis and Allies, the picture isn't so clear. Let's start with the Allies. Now, personally, I think the Allied box is the best out of the 3 starter sets, simply because because of the units that you get inside the box. Bazooka Joe is the same Bazooka Joe, so-called Epic Joe, who appeared in Operation Achilles. And the Pounder isn't a horrible walker at all. It's a decent walker for the Allies. And along with that, you get the Grim Reapers and you get the Bot Hunters, which is the Dust Tactics name for them. Basically, they're the gunners with the extra rocket launcher instead of a rifle, basically. But in tactics they're called the Bot Hunters. In warfare, we just call them the gunners with the 5 AP upgrade. And it is a really good mix. The Grim Reapers are a staple in a lot of Allied armies. If you have like Grim Reapers, hammers with Rhino, tank busters in your army, then that S3 core is really good in a lot of armies. Bazooka Joe is the new Joe, Epic Joe, which actually caused a bit of discussion. Why does the Allied box get the new Bazooka Joe and the new Axis box doesn't get Sigrid? That caused a bit of discussion on the interwebs as well. But yeah, overall the Allied box, just based on the figures for for Dust Warfare purposes, it's a great way to start an Allied army. You get several solid units. On the other hand, you could buy the revised core set, which has Rhino as your hero. It has the hammers. It has the Blackhawk Light Walker, the Death Dealers, and the Hellboys as the other infantry squads. The Death Dealers and the Hellboys are, well, they're not the best infantry squads that the Allies have access to, but they're decent. They're okay. If I were buying the revised core set for the Allies, then I'd probably be most excited about picking up Rhino and the hammers. That is a really, really good combination, really good unit when it's out on the table. Especially with jump, they can't be reacted to when they move, so yeah, they're really good. And the other 2 squads are, they're not too bad. The Hellboys can lead a platoon. Death Dealers aren't so bad. Maybe it's, I don't know. If you're starting Dust Warfare with a friend, then maybe it's a good idea to go for the revised core set, I guess. So one of you takes Axis, one of you takes Allies. But then at the same time, by paying a little more, you could each get yourself, one of the new starter sets. And the new starter set units are maybe a bit more solid. They're kind of more like they feel more all-star-ish than the units in the revised core set. So again, for the Allies, it's kind of similar to the SSU. It's like, yeah, you could go for either option. Get the revised core set while it's still available, or get yourself one of the new starter sets. Although for the Axis, the picture is even muddier. The new starter set isn't bad at all. Ludwig's a decent medium walker. Stefan isn't the worst hero the Axis have by any stretch. I don't think there really is a worst hero for any faction in Dust. The heavy laser grenadiers are great for anti-vehicle, and also not too bad on anti-infantry as well because of laser. And the recon grenadiers is a staple unit in a lot of Axis armies. So the new Axis box isn't that horrible. However, in the revised core set, you have access to Lara, the heavy laser grenadiers, the heavy flak grenadiers, which are actually amazing at taking out Soldier 4, which is now becoming a thing in Dust Warfare because of the SSU Steel Guard. The Stumpionaire, which can lead a Blockkreuz platoon, and you also get the Hans Light Walker, which is actually a really versatile little walker. You can use it just, as a light walker, moving around the battlefield, destroying things, or you can use it as an artillery walker. Just let it hang back, use some spotter teams, basically any unit with artillery strike, and just pepper the battlefield. And that's actually a really effective way to play against the SSU. So with the Axis, you could go either way. To be perfectly honest, if I was starting Dust Warfare, to play Axis, I would go with the RCS, the Revised Core Set, just because it gives you more options, I think. The new box set is fine, but Stefan can only lead a Sturmgrenadier platoon, and it kind of limits your options there. Whereas in the Revised Core Set, Lara can lead a Schwer platoon, or you can you can set up a Blockkreuz platoon with a Stumpionaire. So you have an option there, of which platoon to make, and you can make both platoons with the contents of the Axis side of the Revised Core Set. And actually kind of same with the Allies as well. You can make two different platoons with the Allies in the Revised Core Set. So, I'd probably go with the Revised Core Set if I was starting Axis today. Although, the RCS isn't guaranteed to be available for all that much longer. So eventually it may just come down to, you have to get the new starter set to, start Axis. It's not horrible by any means. Heavy Laser Grenadiers are one of my favorite units. Recon Grenadiers are a solid unit. Stefan is, in the past I've called him a nutter with a flamethrower. He's a pretty decent hero. You can stick him with the Recon Grenadiers, give him a flamethrower. Or you can just, have him on his own. And the Ludwig is kind of one-dimensional. Doesn't have any, abilities of its own, like special abilities. It's just basically point guns at enemy and fire, But, it's decent enough for taking out, infantry and the occasional walker as well. When you get into those situations on the battlefield where it's walker against walker and your Wotan's maybe destroyed or somewhere else on the battlefield and the Ludwig's got to step up and try to take out that Matryoshka or that Pounder or whatever. So, my personal preference would be to get the Revised Core Set if starting Axis, but the new box isn't horrible either. It's a decent choice. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the dice that are included in each box. These are faction dice, and before they were revealed, everyone thought, "Hey, cool! We're going to get new dice in the boxes. We're going to get faction dice." Everyone thought they were going to be like the classic dice, the black and white dice. Except that hit symbols would be replaced by faction symbols. But what actually happened is in the new sets, you get dice that are just a little bit smaller than the dust dice, which isn't a huge problem. They're supposed to be 12mm dice. They look like 12mm. I haven't actually held them in my hand yet, but they look like 12mm dice. And 12mm dice is kind of a standard in wargaming anyway. So the size of the dice is fine. However, the dice, as well as the faction symbols replacing the hit symbols, it now has shield symbols and target symbols on the dice. And as far as I can tell, the idea, at least in tactics, is that your faction symbol is always a success. When you're rolling attacks, then faction symbols and target symbols are successes. If you're rolling defense, then faction symbols and shield symbols are successes. And really, these new dice are a classic example, I think, of design that does not need to exist. There's nothing wrong with the old dice, the black and white dice. Nobody was crying out for new dice. Everyone was perfectly happy with, the standard dice in Dust Tactics. And it's actually a dirty little secret that, much like Dust Warfare, you can actually use standard D6s in Dust Tactics, because Dust Tactics also has the mechanism where you have 2 hits and 4 blanks, at least with the classic dice. So just like in Dust Warfare, you can use a D6 and have 5 and 6 of the hits, or 1 and 6 of the hits, depending on your preference. You can do the same thing in Dust Tactics. You can just use standard D6s. But yeah, nobody was crying out for new dice. People are actually crying out for new models, and for Battlefront to kind of notice Dust Warfare. Please notice me, Sensei. But Yeah, Battlefront went and introduced these new dice. And to say there was a kind of a firestorm within the community over these new dice would be putting it lightly. They weren't very well received at all. And eventually, Battlefront posted on the World of Dust forums that, especially for Dust Warfare players, they said, Dust Warfare players, these dice are not for you. These are Dust Tactics dice. Which also kind of, infuriated a few people. Like, they saw it as Battlefront saying, Dust Warfare, this is not for you. This is tactics we're talking about here. Which, rubbed some people the wrong way as well. But yeah, I mean, these dice are just completely unnecessary, in my opinion. And the way they were introduced was a bit bizarre as well. It came across as if, Battlefront had taken a bunch of people who have never played Dust Tactics before, introduced them to the game with these new dice, and these people who seem to mostly be Flames of War players were like, yeah, cool, these dice are awesome, let's use them. And then so Battlefront were like, all right, cool, let's use them, It's like they didn't ask Dust players or the Dust community, what do you think? Should we do this? Should we introduce these new dice? They just went ahead and did it. And it came across as, a bunch of Flames of War players thought these new dice are cool, so let's use these new dice. That's how it came across. Maybe that wasn't Battlefront's intention, but that is definitely how it came across to me anyway. And it seems like a few other people as well. So, it's kind of bizarre. Like, the old Dust classic dice were working perfectly well, and now Battlefront decided to complicate things and introduce these new dice, which, introduce more visual processing. You have to look for more symbols on the dice instead of just hits and blanks. And, I mean, in Dust Warfare, you can still just use D6s. And I think the outcry over these new dice may have kind of had an effect on Battlefront. Actually, I hope it had an effect on Battlefront. And told them that, okay, Dust Warfare players maybe won't want these new dice if a new book ever comes out, Battlefront book comes out for Dust Warfare. If they ever come out with a second edition book or something like that, they won't make such a drastic change because Dust Warfare players clearly don't want to use these new dice. And anyway, in Dust Warfare, you can use you can use D6s with 5 and 6 and 1 and 6, and a lot of people do that anyway. They seem to think the Dust dice don't roll properly for them or something, or they just prefer to use D6s because that's what they have. Instead of buying a load of custom dice, they just use D6s that they've collected over the years, which is fair enough. But yeah, I mean, these dice, this was a bizarre kind of addition to the starter sets, and because there will be people who will be introduced to the starter sets with these new dice. Existing players will have to learn how they work as well. And they are explained in the rule book, which is actually published on the web not so long ago. You can go and download it from worldofdust.net. In the rule book, it explains how, obviously explains how the dice work. And what I noticed is it takes 3 paragraphs to explain the new dice in the rule book. It only takes 1 paragraph to explain the classic dice, which I think kind of says it all. These dice are an overcomplication. They didn't need to exist. And it's basically, I think it's Battlefront's first big misstep with Dust. Everyone was expecting, the classic dice just with faction symbols, but instead we got these overcomplicated new faction dice. But apart from the dice, the starter sets are, a decent way to, get started in both tactics and in warfare as well. They're all legal platoons for Dust Warfare. Now, as I record this, the starter sets, I think, have been released. The premium ones have definitely been released by Dust Studio, and the non-premium ones I think are out on February 21st. And that's actually something I'm going to discuss later on, that, Battlefront isn't so great at the moment with the release dates. Everything's kind of nebulous, and, you never know when stuff's going to come out. But yeah, those are the starter sets. Now I'm going to move on to Operation Achilles, which was recently released for Dust Warfare. You can go to worldofdust.net, download it, and it has stats inside for every model in Wave 8. So within this 29-page PDF, you'll be able to find stats for the bunkers, for the new Axis units like the Sturmath, the Horton 357, also stats for the new Allied units like Bazooka Joe, the Devil Dogs, and so on. And yeah, the rules were in beta for quite some time. And at one point, I think people were asking, are they ever going to come out? Does Battlefront care anymore? And then suddenly, beginning of February 2014, earlier this month, they were released. And the reaction was mixed. A few people, including myself, thought that some of the units are, the points balance for some of the units was kind of off. Like some units are overcosted and some units are undercosted and, required further tweaking. One example of this, I think, is the Sturmath, the new Axis Guerrilla Squad. These guys are 40 points. And it's like, I don't think many people are going to field them for 40 points. That's a lot of points for a guerrilla squad, especially when the standard Axis guerrillas are, oh gosh, I can't remember, they're 20-something points. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. Those guys are a lot cheaper, and the new guerrillas are, they are decent. They're technically better than the old guerrillas. But I'm not sure if anyone would want to really take them at 40 points. That's a Walker. That's a Ludwig, for crying out loud. Yeah, and also the new Horton 357s are 50 points, which is also kind of high for an Axis plane. But meanwhile, units like the Silent Death for the SSU, that unit's 30 points, and also the stat line is pretty ridiculous. The SSU still doesn't have the range that the Axis and Allies have on their sniper rifles, but these guys are 3-1 against Soldier 1, and 2-1 against 2 and 3, and 1-1 against Soldier 4. And, at one point, actually, the Silent Death were, pretty overpowered. They had Spotter, which was just, it made them far too powerful. That was removed, and now these guys have Grizzle Veterans, and Grizzle Veterans is a compulsory unit upgrade for them. They can't take any other upgrades apart from Grizzle Veterans. But all the same, these guys, Silent Death are pretty strong. They're not overpowered as such at the moment in Achilles, as it was published, in the final version. These guys are not overpowered, but they are really strong, especially when they can do, they roll 2 dice against, any Soldier 2 or any Soldier 3, which is like, most of the Axis and Allies armies. The SSU have also got, of course, the Red Tornado, which ended up at 35 AP, which I've played against a couple of times, and these guys are also pretty strong as well, especially given that the autogun has spray 1 against all infantry, and it's also pretty decent against aircraft as well. And as for the Allied units, I don't actually have much experience of playing with or against the new units, but judging from what people have been saying on the interwebs, the heavy walkers, the Bulldog and 6-shooter, seem to be in the right place point-wise, according to a few Allies players I've seen commenting on it. 60 points is high, but it's also a heavy walker, so that seems okay. But I think it also highlights the kind of discrepancy of the Axis units that a Bulldog or a 6-shooter is only 10 points more than the Horton 357. So, yeah, I would have pointed the Horton 357 at 45 points, and I would have put the Sturmath at about 30 to 35 points. Probably 35. They don't need to be 40. 40 is, I think, too much. 35 points would have been fine. Roughly 10 points more than the standard guerrillas, and it would make both choices, viable in an Axis army. But, yeah, overall, Achilles, I think, it isn't the best campaign book that's come out for Dust Warfare. I don't know if there has been a best one, but it doesn't, it's not like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing, this is the best campaign book that Warfare has had so far. It's not definitely not that. It's not a horrible campaign book, but I think it represents that, Battlefront doesn't have that much experience with Warfare just yet. They're still getting used to it. They're still getting used to how, all the things work and pointing and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of Achilles was based on, like, public testing. There was an open beta after all, which apparently wasn't such a great success. From what it looks like, the open beta was treated by Dust Warfare players as, in the same kind of way as computer games players, PC game players, treat open betas on PC. They don't download the game to test it and give feedback. They download the game just to play it. So although some people gave feedback back to Battlefront, I think a lot of people downloaded it just to play Wave 8 units with no intention of actually testing and giving feedback. So I think next time maybe Battlefront should, for Babylon and whatever comes after that, I think maybe they should do like a FFG style closed group of beta testers instead of doing an open beta, because at least then that if somebody applies to be in that group, they actually want to test. It's more likely they want to actually help test and give feedback And because it's a smaller group instead of a huge open beta available to the whole internet, at least that way, if someone's just, not, if someone's not really participating in that beta, then Battlefront can say, well, hey, what's up? How do you think the beta's going? What's your opinion? So yeah, maybe a closed group beta will be better for future campaign books. But yeah, I mean, I think Achilles reflects the fact that Battlefront isn't all that acquainted with Dust Warfare just yet. And it is very much a kind of a product of like kind of half FFG, half Battlefront. Like, they took over Achilles from FFG and tried to do their own thing with Achilles, and there are a few missteps in the book, but hopefully they'll improve in future books. And, Achilles isn't bad by any chance. But I do have to admit that none of my armies contain Achilles units just yet, just because, I look at the Horton and think, yeah, that's cool, another aircraft, and then it's 50 points. No, I don't want to spend 50 points on an aircraft. And then you got the Sturmurf, the guerrilla unit, and I don't want to spend 40 points on that. As an Axis player, I don't really have any interest in fielding Achilles units in my army. That might be different for an SSU player. It probably is different for SSU players because you get the Steel Guard, which are, at the moment, terrorizing battlefields. They're not OP by any stretch, but they are really good. And also the Allies get the First Soldier 1 unit, the Devil Dogs, and 2 decent heavy walkers. But for Axis players, I don't know. I mean, maybe for other Axis players will want to fill those units. And maybe the new Sigrid is a decent candidate for an army because the new Sigrid is really good. But I don't know. Personally, my army is all FFG right now. There's no Battlefront units. There aren't any Battlefront units in my army, in my Axis army right now. Maybe there will be in future, but at the moment there aren't. Okay, finally in this segment, I'm going to talk about the unit cards and the token set that have not. Well, one's been announced on World of Dust, the other one hasn't. The unit cards have been announced on World of Dust. Basically, there are going to be 3 packs of faction cards, 1 for each faction. And inside, you're going to get the new style CCG size unit cards for Dust Warfare, which is pretty awesome. I mean, although Rodney Smith's cards are really good and have kind of become the standard, the standard unit card for Dust Warfare, the problem with those cards is that they're not sold in shops. You can't go into a shop, pick up a rule book, pick up a pack of unit cards and some models and start playing. You have to download them. You have to know where to download them from. Those cards seem to live exclusively on drop boxes. You have to know someone who knows where the cards are, or do a Google search for them and, search on forums and get a link and then download the cards, blah, blah, blah. So it'd be nice to have, a pack of cards that you can just buy in a shop. And by the looks of it, they're not going to be that expensive either. They're going to be about £7-ish, I think, £7 to £10. So, they're not going to be that expensive for the cards, especially as I think for most people, you only have to buy them once. Maybe twice if you have a lot of a certain unit. But the packs will contain multiples of certain units, certain popular units. So hopefully, Battlefront has got that kind of, that mix right. Like in an Axis army, I'd imagine there'll be a few copies of Recon Grenadiers, Battle Grenadiers, units like that. Maybe for the SSU, you'd have a few for Kieli, Ochniki units, popular units like that. For the Allies, I would say maybe Grim Reapers, the Gunners, and units like that. So, hopefully there'll be a good mix of, of multiple cards for the more popular units, as well as, less cards for other units. Although it'd be nice to have multiples for every unit, because some people, they field like, 3 aircraft in their army. So yeah, these cards were announced on World of Dust, quite a few weeks ago now. And they were supposed to come out in February 2014, this month as I'm recording this. They've now been slated for March. So hopefully they're going to appear sometime in the next 6 weeks or so. And, we'll be able to buy, Dust Warfare card packs. And I do have to say, actually, that the SKU, which is like, the product label, the product code for the packs, is kind of confusing because the official SKU for them is Dust Tactics Faction Warfare card set. So, for example, Dust Tactics Axis Warfare card set. And it's like, it's still being sold to distributors as a Dust Tactics product. Like, come on, it's a Dust Warfare product, label it like that. Okay, so those were the unit cards, and also a token set has managed to ninja its way into the product lineup as well. These have not been announced as yet on World of Dust. At least, not on their own post. I haven't seen it anywhere actually on World of Dust. Basically, there's going to be an official token set, which, by the looks of it, contains the standard tokens used in Dust Warfare: suppression, reaction, damage, so on, blah blah blah. I first found out about this token set from a Japanese website that had them up for pre-order, and a few other English sites like the War Store and so on. They've got them up for pre-order now as well. But there's been no official announcement about that, and it's, to me that's kind of loose from Battlefront. There's this product coming out and there's no official announcement, which doesn't cry professional or anything. So yeah, there's by the looks of things going to be a token set that's going to come out, an official token set that looks like it's going to cost around $15 or so, £10, whatever. So you'll be able to pick up official tokens in the store as well, hopefully pretty soon. Those were also slated for February. There's been no change on that release date as yet, so it looks like they might be out in February, but they might also be out in March. Who knows? There's no release dates for there's no concrete release date for the token set. Okay, now I'm going to talk a bit about Battlefront and the Dust Warfare community and how the two interact, or maybe how the two should interact, and a few other things regarding the community as well. Recently, there's been a bit of ire thrown at Battlefront because from the Dust Warfare community, because I think mainly because a lot of the focus from Battlefront recently has been on tactics. The new starter sets that are coming out are Dust Tactics, focus starter sets. Even though you can use them to start playing Dust Warfare, they're still Dust Tactics sets. We've had Operation Achilles come out, but even so, a lot of people seem to have seen that as like Battlefront released it just to shut up the Dust Warfare crowd. Stop complaining, guys. We get it. You want Operation Achilles to come out. Okay, fine. Here it is. They kind of released it like that just to kind of get it off their chests. And, there was a lot of silence actually from mid-December until, beginning of February when Achilles came out. And speaking of Achilles, the period that Battlefront chose, the kind of part, the part of the year they chose in which to test Achilles maybe wasn't the best, given that it was over the holiday season. And when a lot of people were focused on the holiday season instead of testing Operation Achilles. And that might have actually contributed to the low, the low playtest account for the open beta for Achilles. Maybe if they delayed it until, end of January, beginning of February, then more people would have been willing to test it. Although at the same time, a lot of people would have said, where's our rules? Where's the Achilles rules? Even if Battlefront made an announcement, we're going to release it in February, people would say that, Battlefront, look how long Battlefront's taken to, start this open beta. They couldn't really win in that situation. Maybe the best thing to do was to delay the whole of Operation Achilles, the whole of Wave 8 until the beginning of 2014. I don't know. But anyway, it's come out now. And yeah, a lot of people seem to have this impression that Battlefront looks at Dust Warfare as an afterthought, that Dust Tactics is the main product, the main event, and Dust Warfare is like that weird wargamey open terrain supplement to Dust Tactics that Dust Tactics players can, play when they feel like playing on open terrain. Now, I think there are fors and againsts on both sides of this argument, on the Battlefront side and on the Dust Warfare community side. It is true that Battlefront hasn't been spectacular with Dust as yet. After a fairly good start, last summer when they announced Wave 8 and, this, Wave 8.1 is going to be out in August, 8.2 in September, Wave 8.3 at the end of October. Then, when that all slipped and that release schedule went to hell, then since then they've been kind of reluctant to make any, solid product announcements. Since then, there hasn't actually been a single solid release date from Battlefront. They haven't said this is when the start sets are going to come out. This is when the Dust Warfare cards are going to come out. This is when the token set's going to come out. And I think they've been a bit gun shy on making release announcements given what happened with Wave 8, how late that came out. But on the other hand, gamers expect these kinds of announcements. I mean, look, for example, at X-Wing. Wave 4 was just announced for X-Wing by Fantasy Flight Games. And, this wave isn't out until, like, September, October 2014. And they've announced it now in February 2014, super early. And that does two things. Number one, it shows players that the game is continuing. They can continue to invest in the game because, there will be new models and, there will be support from the company. And number two, it gets people excited. Wave 4's coming out, and everyone's been talking about the new ships and, how they'll interact with the current ships and all that kind of stuff. So, it gets people excited. Future product announcements like that are a thing, they're a good thing. Another game that does that, infamously, or should say famously does them, is Magic the Gathering, which I've played for, quite a few years. Wizards of the Coast always announces the autumn set around February-ish time, January, February time, which has the same kind of effect. It's the same thing. It shows that the game is going to carry on, and it gets people excited. The new set, the new theme for the new expert set. So, it'd be nice if Battlefront were to do that as well. Make an announcement for Wave 9. They should have made an announcement for Wave 9 by now. A lot of the models have been previewed after all on, various places. So they should make an announcement for Wave 9. Announce that Wave 9 is coming out whenever. Even if it's just, second quarter 2014, third quarter 2014, whatever. At least announce it now, make an announcement, get people excited, show people that the game is carrying on. Make sure to announce also that, there will be an Operation Babylon PDF for Dust Warfare. And, show people that, yes, continue to invest in this game because there is a future for the game. That's the message that these super early product announcements sends to people. Feel free to keep buying Dust products because the game will live on. But at the same time, I think that it's kind of silly to assume that Dust is just going to stop after Achilles. Because even though Battlefront hasn't announced any Wave 9 stuff just yet, at the same time, if they don't announce Wave 9, then the Dust Tactics community will be like, oh, hang on a second, where's the new stuff? I thought we were going to the desert. What's going on? So, it'll affect Tactics players as well as Warfare players. So I don't think it's kind of like a thing against Warfare players specifically. But at the same time, Battlefront does have to make an announcement pretty soon, I think, about Wave 9. Unless it's not finished yet. In which case, just tell people that. Wave 9 isn't done yet. We're not ready to make an announcement yet. Hang on, guys. We'll let you know as soon as everything's in place. We'll let you know what's going on with Wave 9. Communication really is the key in a lot of these things. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is kind of the community side and, where it starts when Battlefront stops. It seems that a lot of people are kind of relying on Battlefront to make Dust Warfare popular in their area. Like, come on, Battlefront, where's the support? What are you doing to make Dust Warfare the most popular game in the whole world? That kind of thing. Maybe people aren't actually saying that, but, the way they're saying things is kind of like that. And, there is a point where, Battlefront's efforts stop and the community players have to take over. And, it's Battlefront's responsibility to box up the models, get them to distributors so, stores can order them in and so you can go to your local store or, your favorite online store and buy Dust models. But that's kind of where it stops for Battlefront. They don't do organized play for Dust, even though some people think maybe they should. Some people have opinions on the DDI and how, whether or not the DDI should do organized play or Battlefront should do organized play, blah, blah, blah. But, at the moment, the DDI, controls organized play for Dust. And, it's players who have to make the game popular in their area. Battlefront can't make Dust Warfare popular in your local area. You have to go out and do that. Run demo days, run, Dust get-togethers for players in a local area. Just, like a friendly day when everyone goes to a local store or somewhere, a local club and plays Dust. Run tournaments, that kind of thing. It's up to players to do that, to make the game popular. It's not up to Battlefront. It's not Battlefront's responsibility to make Dust Warfare popular in any part of the world. That's up to players in that local area to make the game popular. So if you think, if you want people to play against, if you want, Dust Warfare to be a thing at your local game store in your local area and you want the game to expand and grow and get bigger and bigger and become popular, then it's up to you to start that in your local area. and, start that growth locally so that eventually, hopefully, Dust will become, a major game on the wargaming scene thing. So yeah, I mean, Battlefront can't do that for you. Battlefront can supply you with models, and they can advertise the game and promote it in, games magazines and, all that kind of stuff. But once the models hit the local store, then, if you're complaining that you have no players to play against, then you have to ask yourself, well, what am I doing to get players playing this game? What have I run any demo days? Have I tried to get something started? Have I joined the DDI and, started a post or even a front to, get Dust Warfare going in my local area? Because if you're just sitting back and hoping that one day there will be players, then nothing's going to happen, And I've seen a lot of people just selling off their armies because there's no one to play against, and they're like, well, no one's going to come along and play Dust Warfare with me, so I'm just going to sell my army. And it's like, well, I started Unit Forward in 2012, in July 2012. And between then, I mean, I got my rulebook in May 2012. And between then and January 2014, I didn't have a regular, like Dust night that I could go to, a regular kind of, group or person I could play Dust against. That only started happening in January. When a guy, Astes, I still don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right or not, Spanish guy. Hi if you're listening. Sorry for mangling your name so much. Anyway, he came along on the Dust Warfare UK group and said he wants to, get started with Dust. He wants to learn the game. And so now we play every Friday night, well, most Friday nights, at Darksphere in Lambeth North in London. And then up until that point, I was trying to get interest in Dust. I ran demos and left messages on shop, message boards and things like that. Trying to find players to play Dust, and there was nothing for a long time. And it's only now that Post 54 London has actually kind of got started. And if you are in the London area or close to the London area, feel free to get in touch on the Dust Warfare UK group. I'll leave a link in the show notes, and join us at Darksphere on Friday nights. But yeah, players have to take the initiative and try to get things started locally. And I understand that without Battlefront making any future announcements about the game, some people might be a bit reluctant to invest, or they might be a bit reluctant to ask other people to invest in Dust Warfare. Like, they might think that doing that will make those people, waste their money or something. But I think it's good at this point to take stock of what we actually have right now. We have models, of course, wave 1 to 8. We have those models for, to make armies out of, or to make armies from, I should say. We have the first edition rulebook from FFG, which is still an amazing game, as well as the campaign books, which FFG produced, and also a new one from Battlefront, Operation Achilles. So we have everything we need to play Dust Warfare. And also, Battlefront is going to announce Wave 9 at some point and start doing previews for Wave 9 because, Dust Tactics is a thing. Those models, remember, those models are marketed as Dust Tactics models, and, Tactics players will be like, where's our models? What's going on? Where's Wave 9? So I don't think Dust Warfare is going anywhere. But at the same time, I am kind of giving Battlefront 2014 to show their commitment to Dust Warfare and, to show that they're, fully behind the game as its own standalone game. Not just a kind of an offshoot of Dust Tactics. And I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt through 2014. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do because, I really enjoy playing Dust Warfare. I want to see it succeed. And I don't think Battlefront is silly enough to just drop Dust Warfare or just drop it to some sort of lesser status. Because a lot of the money in Dust comes from Dust Warfare players. There's a huge influx of cash that's suddenly coming to the hobby, into, the Dust hobby, so to speak, when Dust Warfare was released. Suddenly, wargamers who didn't necessarily want to play, kind of a board game, suddenly, when Dust Warfare came out, they suddenly got a miniatures game on the tabletop with Dust Minis, and suddenly, boom, interest sparked. So I don't think Battlefront is silly enough to just, drop all that. So I'm more than willing to give Battlefront, the benefit of the doubt through 2014. But yeah, they should announce Wave 9 pretty soon, I think, instead of keeping people waiting. And yeah, as I said, at the moment, we have everything we need. to play Dust Warfare, which is the same amazing game that it's always been. So why not go out and play Dust Warfare and get other people into Dust Warfare? Make the game really popular, or try to make the game really popular in your local area. And, be selfish about it. Think of it as, I have no players to play against. I want more people to play against. Let's see what I can do to get more people playing this game. Run demo games. Run a tournament, which may not get people from your local area as such playing at first, but it might attract people from surrounding areas who might want to travel to your event to, play Dust. Because tournaments are actually, a lot of people think of tournaments as a really competitive thing, but tournaments are actually a great way to get people who play one game together and, to get them playing and, to meet other people who basically share your interest. And, just play some, in this case, play some Dust and have a laugh. So, it's, tournaments aren't just super competitive all the time. They're a great social event as well. So, want to organize a tournament. I plan to organize tournaments in 2014 for that purpose, solely for that purpose only. Not so much for the competitive side of it, although it is nice to win at the end of the day. But, it's more about getting people together and playing Dust Warfare, especially people who you haven't played against before. So you can see how different armies work and maybe learn some stuff from people and, all stuff like that. So yeah, if you want the game to be popular in your area, then go out and try to make it popular. That's not something that Battlefront can do for you. That's something that you have to do yourself. If you want Dust Warfare to become popular at your store, your club, or, wherever you play. But yeah, as I said, at the same time, Battlefront should be doing more, I think. Make World of Dust more active. Maybe post articles, solicit articles from the community. I'm sure there's lots of people who want to see their work up on the on the official site for Dust. And also, make these product announcements a lot earlier, because as I said earlier, it makes people excited that new stuff is coming out at some point in the future, and it also shows people that the game is continuing. The game will live on because this stuff has been announced. And in the meantime, we still have Dust Warfare to play. It hasn't gone anywhere. Fantasy Flight still hasn't sold out of their stock of Dust Warfare books, which is actually the reason why Battlefront can't touch that material just yet. Because, that gentleman's agreement, basically FFG has to sell out of their stock of Dust Warfare books before Battlefront can even think about making a second edition or anything like that. And it is a bit early actually right now for a second edition of Dust Warfare, I think. But yeah, I mean, you can still pick up Dust Warfare in a lot of places. The core rulebook. You can still pick up the campaign books, and you can download the latest campaign book as a PDF. And actually, one more thing I want to just quickly talk about is the PDF thing. A lot of people think that Dust Warfare is being downgraded in some way, in status or something, because the latest book is a PDF. I don't mind so much that the book is a PDF, and I actually posted this as a comment on a YouTube video that Beast of War put out, but I'll repeat it here. Basically, I play another war game called Firestorm Armada, which you might have heard of. And, the second edition just came out, and it's amazing. It's like one of my favorite war games now, along with Dust Warfare. It's a spaceship fleet battle game. And Spartan Games, the publisher, put out all of the stats for all of the ships, for all the 6 factions, and now also the minor factions as well. They put all the stats out as free PDFs. And they also plan to publish fleet, like fleet manuals, as dead tree books, physical books that you can buy in a store, which would just have fluff, fleet building guides, I think, things like that. But the PDFs have all the stats that you need to start playing now. Get yourself a copy of the hardcover rulebook, get yourself some models for a faction, and you can download the PDFs and start playing. And because of that experience with Firestorm Armada, I don't find the PDFs for Dust Warfare such a bad thing. It actually lowers the barrier of entry significantly for a new player getting into the game. Because to start playing, if somebody, for example, were to disregard the FFG campaign books and just start with Achilles, all they have to do is buy the hardcover rulebook, some models, download Achilles, and they can start playing. If they buy a Horton 357 or Sturmath or Silent Death or whatever, they can download Achilles, they've got all the stats on the PDF, and they can start playing. You can put that on your smartphone, you can put that on your tablet, you can print it out if you want to, start playing with those units. You don't actually have to go out and buy a campaign book. I find that really good. I think I don't mind the move to PDF at all, because of the flexibility that PDFs offer. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that little thing about the PDFs because, you know, I like the shift to PDFs instead of, you know, Dead Tree campaign books. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have them, you know, to have the campaign books published for people who actually want to buy them as a book. Yeah, it'd be nice, but I don't think PDFs are so bad either. So yeah, we have everything we need to play Dust Warfare now. So why not play Dust Warfare now? You know, why not to try to make it, you know, a big deal and show Battlefront and Dust Studio that there are people out there that like the game, are playing the game, and trying to get other people into this game. You know, they may be promoting Dust Tactics now as their thing, but that doesn't mean that, you know, Warfare is dead in any sense. Dust Warfare is very much alive, and it's up to us, the players, to keep it that way. Okay, that was Zero Station episode number 4. Thank you very much for listening. As always, if you want to get in touch via social media or via email, you can do. The email is hello@unit4.com, and the social media is socialmediaservice.com/unitforward. So twitter.com/unitforward or @unitforward, facebook.com/unitforward, youtube.com/unitforward, or you can find Unit Forward also on app.net, which is alpha.app.net/unitforward. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, you know, app.net is like a new social media API style thing, which a lot of people think is kind of like Twitter, but it's not exactly like Twitter. But it'd be nice to see, you know, a bigger wargaming community on app.net. So you can find Unit Forward on there as well. The next episode 5, is actually going to be out. If you're listening to this on the day it comes out, it's actually going to be out later this week, on Thursday. But if you listen to this in the future, then, you know, that probably means nothing because both episodes will be out by the time you listen to this. Okay, so that's about it for episode 4. Until the next episode, see ya! This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. That means you can give this podcast to anyone you want as long as the author is credited. But you can't make your own episode, and you can't use this episode for commercial purposes without the author's permission.